Good evening, everyone, and thank you for spending your Saturday night with us. We'll be your MCs for tonight. I'm Rebecca Gilman, a junior at Granite High School and manager on the speech and debate team, among too many other things.
And I'm Rahani Dillon, also a junior at Granite High School, and we are thrilled to be your MCs for tonight. But this night isn't about us. It's about shining a light on our fantastic lineup of speakers. Your speakers today come from schools around the region and are rising stars in advocacy, speech and debate, academics, sports, and so much more. But before we introduce our first amazing speaker, let's get a few chores out of the way. First, please remember to silence your cell phones, and please wait until there's a pause in the program to use the restroom.
Secondly, since I do speech and debate and not mock trial, I don't want legal liabilities for anything crazy. So it's time for the safety talk. Let's give a warm welcome to our director, Pavan Kumar.
Hello everyone, and welcome to TEDx Granite High School Youth. I'm thrilled and excited to have you all here. Before we start, I'd like to provide some general information about the rules and safety. First, my name is Pavan Kumar, and I am the director of TEDx Granite High School Youth, the first ever TEDx hosted at Granite Bay. We will do safety first. In case of an emergency, there are 2 exit doors on either side in front of the theater. Flash photography is strictly prohibited. We have some amazing photographers and videographers here who will do an absolutely fantastic job of taking photos and videos of the people you know. So you don't have to worry about it. Enjoy the event. You can take photos, but make sure your flash is always off. Please do not stand up while taking photos if you're going to take any, as it will block the person in front of your ability to see the speaker. Bathrooms are located on the outside near the lobby, and to the left is the women's bathroom and to the right is the men's. It is going to get dim, so make sure to watch your step while walking. Try using the bathrooms between speakers, as we do not want to disrupt the entire talk by interrupting their flow. As for breaks, we're going to have intermission after 4 speakers. It is going to be a 15-minute break, so it is going to be relatively short. During this time, ask us any questions about the event, or just get up and stretch before following the slate of other speakers. Please silence your phones and put your phones on Do Not Disturb, as this event is being recorded. We want to ensure that each speaker's presentation is accurately preserved for TED's archives. Lastly, here is a video to help you understand the difference between TED and TEDx. Enjoy.
Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
Thank you, Pavan, and thank you, TED. We are almost kicking off the program, but first, a few words from our founder and licensee, a senior and debate captain at Granite Bay High School, along with being a wonderful leader and teammate. Please welcome Sia Mishra.
Well, hello everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sia Mishra. I'm a current senior here at Granite Bay High School, and I'm the founder and lead organizer of TEDx Granite Bay High School Youth. This event has taken weeks of planning, meticulous dedication from everyone involved, and I'm so grateful to see it come to life on this very hot October afternoon. But first, a few thank yous have to go out. This Granite Bay High School has been so supportive in making it happen, from Mr. Pritchard and the speech and debate team kind of taking this on as an event, to Granite Bay's media, technical, and theater teams who are quite literally making this happen. They deserve a huge round of applause, and please try to go up to them and tell them that they did so much for this event happening. We have an incredible organizing committee entirely composed of student leaders who have handled every aspect of this event, from its social media marketing to finances and budget. We've entirely had students in this event, and I'm so grateful to have worked with so many students who bring so many unique skills to the table. Please refer to your programs. Please refer to your programs to see which incredible students have been involved, and as well as see which sponsors, which local groups have been committed to amplifying youth voices. Check out who they are in your programs, both on the right page and on the back, to see who has really made this happen, and that's incredibly important. But lastly, my biggest thank you goes to all of you. Because just by being here, you've shown your commitment to amplifying youth voices, supporting youth in our local communities, and really making sure that we're represented in decision-making and have a voice, not for now, but also for the future. Because ever since I licensed this event back in April, the biggest question I get is, why TEDx at Granite Bay High School? And my answer is quite simple. Because over the last few years, I've seen that youth have so much power in key spaces, whether that's policymaking or technological innovation. But unfortunately, too many youth are told to wait their turn, but that they don't have enough experience to contribute yet. And we make young students feel like I constantly have to wait for something to happen. But this small sample of students today in this community are really well going to disprove that. They've all meticulously worked at developing their ideas, and they're so incredibly diverse, and I'm incredibly excited for you to hear them. Because as working professionals in this community, adults in this community, as parents in this community, I really want you to take a chance on students, on young people, and see that they can contribute such unique values and perspectives, whether that's in the workplace, nonprofit spaces, or even your day-to-day interactions. So I really hope what you take away from tonight is that, and truly to empower youth, we have to listen to all of their ideas and see what they can contribute. So I hope you're inspired. I hope I've given you something to think about, as well as the wonderful 8 speakers we have up next, and I truly hope you enjoy. So that's all for me, and I'm going to hand it off to our MCs to introduce our very first speaker tonight. Thank you all again.
Thanks, Sia. And now the moment that you've all been waiting for. Let the speeches begin.
And on that note, tonight's theme is lighting the spark, igniting conversation and inspiring discourse. Thankfully with words and not matches, as starting a fire is a skill that Girl Scouts failed to teach me. And it's a timely theme, not because just the sun is setting so early now that we're going to need flashlights to get back into our cars once we're all done, but because we need to light a spark of hope in our world as it seemingly descends into chaos and gloom all around us. And as our fantastic founder, Sia Mishra, loves to say in our debate rounds, the slogan of the Washington Post is, "Democracy dies in darkness." So today, let's try to light a spark and battle the proliferation of darkness head-on with a lineup of amazing speeches to make this world just a little bit brighter.
On that note, let's welcome our first speaker to take the matches. Starting off the day with a bang is a senior hailing from Whitney High School. where he's a broadcaster for WCTV 19 with a speech that, even though it's the weekend, will take us back to class, or the classes we wish we had. Anand Bandarkar.
Hi everyone. Wow, that's a lot of people. I'm used to sitting down there because I went to a TEDx event when I was a sophomore in high school, and I just remember looking at people and I was like, wow, he's so nervous. He can't talk. He keeps stuttering. But now I realize it's actually pretty scary, but we'll get through it. So, welcome everyone. It's an honor to be speaking at TEDx Granite Bay. And before I begin, I'd like to just take a moment one more time and thank Sia Mishra and Pavan Kumar for organizing such a wonderful event. So please put your hands together and give them a round of applause. Let me start with 3 scenarios: building a bookshelf, changing a tire, and fixing a leaky sink. What do all 3 of these have in common? Well, my go-to solution for all 3 of those would be duct tape. Fun fact, that really doesn't work. But the truth is, these are all fundamental skills that many of us kids really don't have. If I were to build a bookshelf right now, my go-to would be to call Home Depot and pay that extra $50 assembly fee. If I needed to change a tire, I'd have AAA on speed dial. I've had them on speed dial. My car literally broke down today. And finally, if I needed to fix a leaky sink, I really don't know what I'd be doing. So there's that. More importantly, these are fundamental skills, hands-on skills, which our generation lacks. They're so focused on academic talent and GPA and SAT scores and all these standardized tests and just everything so academically based that they don't know what skills they'll need to prepare themselves for real life. Today, I'll be discussing the fundamental skills which students need that will prepare them for college, their career, and just life in general. So, let me start with a quick story. Growing up, I wasn't really super into hands-on skills. I was into a lot of video games, watching TV, loafing around. I wasn't really big on doing things outside the classroom. I'd study occasionally, usually last minute, and just pull things together and hope that things went well. But I realized my sophomore year that things needed to change and that I needed to make a difference in my life. My dad would always tell me as a kid that I needed to step out of my comfort zone and try new things. I needed to stop sitting at my desk playing video games and playing Fortnite and try building something or playing with electronics or just doing anything that he did during his generation as a kid. But in my defense, I was still building in Fortnite. That's what I used to tell him. But nonetheless, I took on this challenge my sophomore year and I tried to grow. And I looked ahead in my life and I had technically a midlife crisis. I realized that college admissions were right around the corner, 3 years actually, to be specific. And I realized that I still hadn't really started preparing. I would go around and I would hear all my friends talking about, hey, I'm doing this, I'm trying to get into UCLA, so I'm going to participate in this club. I have this internship going on. I'm running on 3 hours of sleep because I'm doing something outside of school that's keeping me busy and preparing. I would always tell myself, oh, what overachievers? I think to myself, I'm already set for college. I've got grades, I've got everything, right? The truth is, grades really aren't the biggest part of college. UCLA, take UCLA for example. It has over 100,000 applicants every single year, but for only 8,000 spots. That's, for those of you who don't want to do math right now and are here to listen to me speak, that's around an 8% acceptance rate. To prepare for that is a challenge. If you want to be 8,000 out of 100,000 students, that's a very hard feat to achieve. But it doesn't just come from sitting in the classroom and coding in Java, or learning math, or doing calculus, or whatever kids are saying they're better at than you. You need to step out of your comfort zone and try new experiences. You need to, go and not just learn Java, but I guess, oh wow, that's a lot of people. Hold on. You need to step out of your comfort zone and go try new skills beyond hard skills. So there are two different types of skills you can have, hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills are usually the ones that kids like to brag about. Oh, I got 100% on my coding project. I'm a professional mathematician. I have a job in the math industry. I tutor 100 different kids. I can do all that. I just got 100% on my language arts essay. Those are all the hard skills. But going into real life, employers are looking for, especially in interviews, soft skills along with hard skills. Your resume might carry, the hard skills on your resume may carry you into an interview. But especially like with college interviews, they're looking for those soft skills. They're looking for experiences that shape you as a person. They're looking for communication skills. They're looking for the ability to organize your time and communicate effectively. They're looking for all these skills, soft skills, that will prepare you for life and make sure that you are successful in your job. These are a lot of the skills that we fail to consider. We're always considering the grades and academic achievements, but to get into UCLA, which has also diversified, you need those soft skills. You need skills that will make you stand out from other applicants. Let me give you another example. Like your MCs told you, I began my experience freshman year as a broadcaster for WCTV 19. And to be honest, I didn't take it seriously. I still had the dumb freshman mindset, for those of you who know. I was like, oh, it's freshman year. I'm like the best kid on campus. I go to high school now, and I'm getting A's. Like, that's good enough, right? Well, I realized that I need to step up my game. My friends were all building up all these extracurriculars. Some kids were in broadcast and were getting internships. We're doing fellowships. We're getting part-time jobs. They were just doing a lot more and thinking outside the box, while I would come home and play video games and be happy that I got a good test score and just relax. Then I realized, so going into junior year, sophomore year, I continued to fail. I didn't care enough. I failed to manage my time. I just really didn't put in the efforts that I should have. I slacked off. I got yelled at. I learned what passive aggression was in the hard way. And it just really hurt. And I would come home and be frustrated and just sit there and cope my pain with like frustration and just trying to drown it all out. But really, I didn't try to make a change. I was like, okay, what am I struggling with? What skills am I lacking beyond the classroom? The skills that I was lacking were like skills that job interviewers would be looking for in job applicants. I realized I needed to make a change. That summer, going into junior year, I reshaped myself and realized I need to actually choose a different path in my life. Along with academics, I began taking my life more seriously. In WCTV 19, I started focusing more on video production. I actually came on time. Instead, if I had to be in school by 8:10, I'd be in school by 8:05 instead of 8:12. So that's what changed. I started focusing on time management. There's a soft skill. I started organizing myself. I use this thing. Who's heard of Google Calendar? I started using Google Calendar. That really helped. And that helped with organization. And everything just started falling into place. It was that one change. I realized I needed skills beyond the classroom that really helped. And I'm a senior, but if I was a freshman in college, I'd tell you that I got into UCLA, but I didn't. So I'll be back next year. But nonetheless, my point is that we need these soft skills. We need to realize that we need to develop these skills beyond just hard skills, technical skills, and academic skills. We need to develop soft skills, like talking to people. Like, this is a skill right here, public speaking. I had to sit for hours this last week. It should have been a month, but I sat for 1 week every single day and tried to memorize the speech, and I still stuttered. See, there's a skill I'm still working on. There's public speaking. I learned how to use a camera because of WCTV 19. I can turn on a camera with my eyes closed, and I would show you, but like, there's no camera here. I've just developed a lot of skills over time, and I'm not trying to brag, but like, it's an accomplishment. And I think all of you students out there, and even adults, could accomplish these skills and push your kids to go beyond the classroom and develop these skills. Before I leave, let me leave you with these 2 words: stretch yourself. What does that mean? Step out of your comfort zone. Go try new things. If you fail, go ahead and fail. Just don't stop yourself in your classroom seat doing just that. Go get an internship. Go volunteer. Go get a job. Go join a club. Just try new things. Try to build your skills and try to make that change in your life beyond just classroom academic skills. And if you fail, it's okay. Life is a time for you to mess up, and the most perfect person has messed up at least 1,000,000 times. So, I'm leaving you with that. Try to explore yourself, go beyond the classroom, and find those skills that will prepare you for life. Thank you.
Thank you, Anand. Your speech has convinced me to start my teeming stack of AP US history homework and to try out some more practical skills, like fixing my squeaky bathroom door or learning how to light a campfire. But to help me out, our next speaker will spark the first few flames, further than I've ever gotten in my attempts at camping. She's Bonnie Tuari, a sophomore here at Granite Bay who's already lit up the world with her amazing literary prowess.
Colin looked in the mirror, but the man facing him was not one he knew. That's the first line of my historical fiction novella, The War from Dusk Till Dawn, releasing this fall. This particular moment marks a crucial turning point for one of my characters, Colin. He's a strong, loyal revolutionary, a man who's fought his entire life against the British oppressors. However, in this scene, he realizes that the true problem is not the colonial people. It's not the king, it's not the queen, it's not the traitors. It's the ideas they've planted inside of his head. Because he's beginning to believe them. He's beginning to realize that maybe his people aren't worth as much as the white people are. Except that was not his mindset originally. So how did this happen? Colin's battle against the colonial mindset is not just historical. It is one that many of us here today are also fighting, myself included. Okay, so to realize how this happens, how we fight the colonial mindset in our society today, we first have to understand what the colonial mindset truly is. The colonial mindset, in its essence, is no more than the need to fit in, to belong with other people. When Colin looked into that mirror, he realized that he was no longer a freedom fighter. He had started to become a person who subconsciously agreed with the British oppressors. He agreed that his people were somehow inferior. That is the subtle yet powerful work of the colonial mindset. It convinces you that you don't have to be bound physically. You can be bound mentally. It shows you that not everything is what you seem. So, the way this can fit into our society today, in our modern age, because that's historical, is in many places. For example, in high school. I attend Granite Bay here, so I know what it's like. When I'm in a place surrounded with so many other people my age, I begin to take in their words. I listen to what they have to say about me, and I reflect on it. And sometimes, I change myself because of it. It's these tiny offhand remarks that these people make, like, oh, your shoes, what are those? Or, oh, change your pants, those are not cool. And so, I'll do it. But then I realized that changing myself for other people isn't going to help me. That's exactly what Colin did. He changed his mindset to be as one of his oppressors. And even though that's history, it's history repeating itself in modern day society. And not only that, I was raised in a very STEM-oriented family. career path should be something robotics or medical related. However, I decided I want to be a girl who goes to art school. So when I brought this up, my parents weren't exactly unsupportive, but they were concerned for my future. They told me that writers would not be successful in their life, that writers would not make enough money, they would not be happy, and they would not grow as human beings. And for a while, I believed them. I believed them in the sense where I didn't want to be a writer anymore. My dream was no longer one of mine. In fact, it wasn't until I was writing my novella that I realized the parallel and how unfair it is. Because that is a stereotype, that writers can't be happy. I've met writers who are very happy and very successful in their life, both financially and mentally. And because of this, I started looking around. I started noticing how my peers would also change themselves based on what other people say. Like if I made a comment about someone's hair, like, your hair looks so good when it's up, they'll leave their hair up for the rest of the week. And I noticed patterns like this go on and on and on. And I realized so many people change themselves to be who other people expect them to be. These are called stereotypes. In essence, a stereotype is made from fear. We stereotype other people and this world because we're scared. We're scared of things we don't understand. And most of the time, we don't understand what life is. We don't understand what's going on around us. So we try and make these people smaller. We try and make them simpler. We try and make situations into smaller things that we can understand and categorize into boxes. But people have to understand that these labels that other people give us are not who we are. Other people don't define our worth. We get to choose that. So, how do you reclaim our life? How do we take away the weight of other people's opinions off our shoulders? Well, there's 8 billion people on this planet. 8 billion. How are we supposed to confine ourselves to match the standards of every single one of those people? If one person says that I look great with glasses, and another person says I look great without glasses, what do? I can't make both of them happy. The same way, I can't make everyone around me happy. And it took me a while to realize this, but the only opinion that truly matters is my own, because my word is the only word that has power in my life. If someone tells me, back to the glasses example, to take off my glasses because I don't look good with them, if I choose to internalize their opinion and I choose to take off my glasses, then yes, it will change my life. But if I choose to leave my glasses on and not care about what they say, then no, their words have no power. Their words have no impact over me. And the truth is, they probably don't care that much. It's not their life. They don't care. And so it's very, very important to understand that offhand remarks of other people don't define who you are, and you shouldn't live your life based on what they say. So, when you go home and you look in the mirror, just like Holland did, do you see yourself? Or do you see a person who's been conformed by society, raised to these different expectations, layered on masks of who you aren't to fit in? Because if you do, then I challenge all of you today to go home and start reclaiming who you truly are. Because in life, you're the one who writes your own speech. You're the one who writes your story. You're the one who holds the pen. No one else. They can tell you what to write, but you don't have to write it. And so, if you choose to disregard other people's opinions of you and live life the way you want to, the way you will be happy, that is the only thing that matters. Your opinion is the only opinion that matters. And that is where true freedom begins. Thank you.
Great job, Bonnie. And next up, we have a senior at Granite Bay High School. She's an academic weapon, my teammate on varsity tennis, and a leader in all of her circles, from church to school. Today, she will coach our fledgling Fire to Grow by sharing her experiences and growth from when she stepped out of the insulating bubble that is our community of Granite Bay. Let's give it up for Ella Wong.
few months ago, I did something that every teenager did. That is, I went shopping with my friends. Sounds normal, right? Well, the second that I walked into that bustling shopping center, things got weird. The conversations halted. Everyone's heads swiveled in my direction. And for a long 2 seconds, I could have heard a pin drop. Then, an excited laugh broke the silence, and I turned to see an elderly lady on her feet pointing in our direction. Then, as if someone pressed play on a remote, the entire center came back to life. Excited crowds started to form around me, and I found myself having to muscle my way through the center. Pale blue eyes seemed to follow me everywhere that I went. Arms began tugging me from side to side, asking me for selfies. I had people reaching for my long hair to touch it, to compare it to their dark curls. I even heard comments about my teeth and my smile and how I looked like a movie star. Now, I often wondered, this is what it's like to be a celebrity. Now, before you start wondering if I completely fabricated this whole scenario, let me explain to you the context. The shopping center that I walked into that day wasn't your average Walmart or the Galleria Mall. It was, in fact, a tinted cheese factory in the middle of a Georgian bazaar. And no, this isn't the Georgia you're thinking about, the Georgia in the deep south with peaches and college football. This is the country of Georgia in Eastern Europe. All right. All right, it's working now. Okay. So I had traveled to this country over the summer with a group of college students on an overseas service trip. As a developing economy still recovering from former Soviet occupation, most people in Georgia lived in poverty and never really got the chance to leave their villages. So for them, seeing foreigners in their hometown was quite rare. And when they saw me, I looked so different from the typical Slavic person from that region of the world. And they could tell that I was American. They could see it in the way that I dressed, in the way that I walked, the way that I held myself. To them, I was someone from a world they had only ever seen on a screen. And so it fascinated them. Now, knowing myself, I usually would have enjoyed the attention that they gave me. But after a few days, I started to get this nagging feeling that something wasn't right. Each subsequent interaction that I had with another Georgian excited to meet me grew more and more unsettling. I got this feeling of guilt and sadness and even a little bit of pity. I realized that for these Georgians, meeting me was the highlight of their day, sometimes even their week, and for a few people, even their entire month. Yet, I had nothing special to offer. I couldn't help by nationality or my appearance, and yet I was being praised for things that I had no control over. I started to express these feelings of uneasiness to some of the other Americans with me on the trip, and they never really seemed to understand what I was talking about. They would nod along with me, and then say something along the lines of, "We need to count our blessings because we're more fortunate than the Georgians." These responses frustrated me. I felt as if they were completely missing the point. Everyone seemed so hyper-fixated on feeling bad for the Georgians. And in doing that, no one thought to appreciate what was valuable about them. So, I started to wonder, what would happen if I hypothetically switched lives with these Georgians? Would the Georgians be better off? Would there be a price that they would have to pay? I realized that my dilemma was not about what the Georgians lacked and what America had. No, it was the other way around. You see, the Georgians had something that we didn't, and it bothered me that they couldn't see it, that no one else seemed to be able to see it. I felt so undeserving of their praise, because I saw something valuable in the Georgian culture that America lacked. The more time that I spent with them, the more that I realized they had a few slightly and different approaches to life. Approaches that I believe America desperately needs. One of the first things that I noticed about the Georgian culture was that they were distinctly community-minded. Now, with not much else to do, most Georgian children spend their free time doing one thing and one thing only. That is playing soccer. So after a few days of serving in a particular small village, we decided to put on a Georgia versus United States soccer match. After scooping the cow dung off the fields, we began to play, and were soundly beat by the Georgians. It was quite embarrassing, really. We lost 8-1, but afterward, we got to hand them a trophy and some prizes that we had prepared for their win. Now, I have been a competitive soccer player for many years here in the United States, and I have memories of every tournament. The winning team's players would always be fighting over who got to hold the trophy, who got to be the one to take it home. But when I was watching these Georgians, I saw that they had given the trophy to the youngest player to take home. There was no argument. There wasn't even a discussion about who got the trophy. Everyone just seemed to know. Then I looked around and saw that the prizes we had handed out were now in the hands of the younger sisters and the little kids running around the field. I realized that the Georgians were raised to look after the youngest and weakest in their society. It was what made them a true community, knit together in genuine care for each other. I had never seen this kind of attitude here in America. We live in a very individualistic society where we compete for everything. For money, education, recognition, relevance. We're told that our lives belong to us, and we shouldn't let anyone get in the way of us accomplishing our goals. But is this truly a beneficial idea? In a society where every man is for himself, it's led to broken relationships, fractured homes. But what would it look like if we cease to put our personal benefits above the interests of others in our community? The second thing that I noticed about the Georgians was their hospitality and generosity. One day, a small group of women and I went to visit a particular single mother in great need. She lived in a crumbling concrete house, alone, with her little boy. Her roof was caving in, she lacked running water, and was on the very last legs of her food. Yet when we got there, I had never received a warmer welcome. She ran out of her house and embraced each one of us and kissed us each on the cheek, even though we were total strangers to her. Then she led us into her home, and I saw she had spread her entire rickety dining table with the very last of her homemade bread and cheese. Even her son, so eager to show us his little trinkets and shells and offered us flowers to put in our hair. This love of hospitality and willingness to give to others despite not having much is another thing I noticed we lack here in America. We live in a social media-obsessed society where we're conditioned to want more and more and to hang on to what we have with an iron grip. We're told that if we can't support ourselves, we're under no obligation to offer anything to anyone else. But we failed to recognize the value of generosity. What would it look like if we could switch our mindsets and realize that investing with abandon in the people around us is far more rewarding than looking for fulfillment in any sort of material thing? Finally, the most important thing that I realized about the Georgians was their unified resilience. On one of the last days that I spent there, I remember standing on a fortress. It was built in the 4th century. It was on a hill that loomed over the entire capital city. This fortress was the place where the Georgians had, over a millennia ago, defended themselves against attacking empires. Now it was a reminder of their history. Although the Georgians always seemed to be ruled over by the largest empires of the day, from the Ottomans to the Persians to even as recently as the Soviet Union, they never stopped fighting to keep their individual heritage alive. I was reminded of it everywhere that I went. At every street corner, there were people in traditional dress, dancing to Georgian despite the challenges that they faced in their history. And though the Georgians praise us, I wish that they knew how much they had to offer the world. I may never get the chance to tell them that, but for now, I'll pass the value on to you. So live for your community and not just for yourselves. Give freely of what you have, even if it's not much. And face your challenges with radical resilience, always remembering who you are and where you have come from. What would our society look like if we embraced these Georgian values? Let's envision it and let's make it a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Ella. Now our fourth speaker will continue to kindle the flames. She's a sophomore here at Granite Bay and serves on the Placer County Youth Commission, and she's a fiery orator on a speech and debate team. Today she'll bring you a speech that will shed light on an issue that has systematically been kept in the dark. So please welcome Elisa Siddiqui and get ready to paint the world red.
Red. Red is a color of passion, hate, love, and of course, periods. Did you know that the average woman spends 7 years over the course of a lifetime on her period? That's 8% of the average female lifespan. For a color we tend to associate with death and violence, red is one that women spend a significant portion of their time alive identifying with. It isn't always rosy, pun intended. Women go through so much because of their periods that sometimes it has me seeing red. Internalized shame, coupled with shame from others, negatively impacts the way society as a whole sees the menstruating body, perpetuating cycles of shame and stigma. As if that weren't enough, inequity means many women aren't even able to access the crucial products that allow them to safely manage their periods. We as a society have become so poisoned against one of the most universal experiences in the world that we don't even feel comfortable acknowledging the fact that we have a problem. So let's do that. First, we'll discuss the stigma that surrounds menstruation, before moving on to the unsung issue of period poverty. And finally, what we all can do to solve both of these issues. So first, stigmatization. There are many different forms of stigma when it comes to menstruation, but two of the most common are period shame and shaming, two sides of the same coin. When I first got my period, I was excited. I burst into the room my parents were in, overjoyed to be able to tell them the good news. For me, that dark red mark represented a new phase in my life, and I couldn't wait to share it with the two most important people in said life. I didn't feel like I had anything to hide or be ashamed of. However, that's not the case for most. A 2018 poll of 1,500 women in the United States by Thanks reported that 58% of women felt a sense of embarrassment simply because they were on their period, and 42% have experienced what's known as period shaming. Now, as you've probably already figured out, period shaming is the term given to when people make derogatory comments towards women on the basis of their periods. And while they might seem harmless, comments like, oh, don't go near that one, she's on her period. Or we could never have a female president, so when her period came around, we'd be in nuclear war. Cause women to internalize misogynistic thoughts about their own bodies, with, again, according to Thanks, 1 in 5 being made to have these feelings because of comments made by a male friend. Additionally, 12% are shamed by family members, and 1 in 10 by a classmate. Overall, 44% of men admit to having made these kinds of comments to a woman before. That we are being made to feel ashamed of a natural biological function is anything but. However, it's part of a persistent pattern, one that can be seen all across the world, sometimes with deadly consequences. In Bolivia, menstruating women are told that mere contact with menstrual blood
can lead to the development of medical conditions such as cancer. In certain parts of India, on the other hand, women are prohibited from touching food or crops while on their periods, for fear of inflicting bad luck and misfortune upon their communities. And in Nepal, menstruating women are isolated to menstruation huts, small windowless structures built without air conditioning, ventilation, and other features typical of a Nepali residence. The reason for this ostracization? They're believed to be possessed by evil spirits while on their periods. This now outlawed practice resulted in 3 deaths in February of 2019. A mother and her 2 children started a fire in one of these huts to fend off a cruel winter's night, only to die due to smoke inhalation because of the lack of ventilation in the structure. Period shame is not a victimless little issue caused by women being overly sensitive or unable to take a joke. It's a killer, the work of which we are still seeing to this day. Social issues aren't even the only ones that we face when it comes to periods. Period poverty is defined as the inability to afford or access feminine hygiene products, and it's something women all across the world struggle with. In the United States, 22 of the 50 states still have some form of taxation in place on feminine hygiene products, despite the fact that many organizations recognize access to these items as a human right. When women aren't able to secure access to individually packaged sterile items like pads and tampons, it can lead to irritation, discomfort, and even the development of toxic shock syndrome, a rare bacterial infection caused by bacteria entering a woman's bloodstream through her vagina. In countries where these items aren't available at all, the problem is only exacerbated, with women being forced to rely on lint, rags, dirt, cloth, and even cow patties, shaved down pieces of cow excrement, sun-dried and placed into direct contact with the genital regions for the sole purpose of absorbing menstrual blood. The fact that not all women are able to access the products that they deserve as a human right is atrocious and shows that we don't recognize the problems women face as problems faced by society as a whole. It is imperative that we make sure women have access to these items regardless of their economic status or the economic status of the regions in which they live. I'm fortunate enough to have unlimited access to these items whenever I need them, but for far too many women like me, that's not a reality. So let's take a step back. These are big problems, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the sheer amount of change we all need to make to create a better world. The truth is, there are small steps every one of us can take in order to put an end to period problems. And I'm not talking about ruined pants. Let's start from the beginning. When it comes to eliminating menstrual shame, the simple answer is to speak up. Call out obvious examples of period shaming and explain how it's harmful, not just to individual women, but to society as a whole. We're all brought down by this normalized disparagement that happens towards women. For the women in the audience, the Paul Gray Handbook of Critical Menstruation Studies says that menstrual moaning, by reiterating negative cultural construction of women's bodies as flawed, deficient, and diseased, may have a deleterious impact on women's menstrual attitudes and perpetuate menstrual shame. Albeit long-winded way of saying another way that we can fight back against internalized stigma, start looking at our periods in a positive light. Look past the sometimes obvious downsides and acknowledge something many of us don't regularly say aloud. Periods are our superpower, the result of the workings of incredibly complex and beautiful systems that we are still learning about to this day. They might put a cramp in our style, but they're not something we should be bringing ourselves down for. When it comes to eliminating period inequity, on the other hand, it feels a lot more difficult to dismantle something built into the systems that govern us. The fact that this is even a problem I have to stand up here and tell you about shows that we are failing the women who live in our world. On an individual level, there are many organizations working to provide women with access to products that they can't secure. I started volunteering last year with an organization called Days for Girls, which works to provide women all across the world with access to reusable and washable cloth pads made by volunteers like me. Days for Girls is working to enable women to take back their autonomy and have a sense of dignity in the way that they manage their periods. There are many wonderful nonprofits like Days for Girls working to put an end to period poverty. And I encourage every one of you here today to get involved. You can be a part of the change that we need to make in order to create equity for women across the globe. So, now that you've all absorbed so much information that you might leave, and trust me,
not a fun one to clean up. How are you feeling? Do you need an Advil or maybe a heating pad? Because what the world needs is to be painted red. When I told my mom the topic of my speech, she told me that periods make the world go round. And you know what? She's right. Every one of us in here today is in here because of someone with a period. Someone who has or has had experience with these issues. We owe it to them and to our future menstruators to make a change in the world as we know it. To educate ourselves about the problems and then make a difference. And trust me, there's a lot of difference to be made. You could even say that right now, our world is a bloody mess. Thank you.
Thank you, Eliza. That was an amazing speech, period. Well, we're already at the halfway point. Time really flies when you're having fun. All these passionate speeches have really ignited the night, and is it just me feeling a little bit hot in here?
I guess that's what happens when you have so many intense speeches lighting the spark. So it's time for intermission. Take a few minutes to chill out, get some fresh air, and use the restroom if you need to, before we kick off the second half of the night.
Hopefully you've all gotten out any jitters, and remember to stay in your seats and continue to respect the speakers. So buckle up for the second half of the show. While everyone was out, the sparks that we have kindled have begun to flicker. So let's add some fresh fuel to the fire with a speech on this year's most hotly contested topic, and everyone's favorite conversation at the Thanksgiving table, American politics. So let's give a warm welcome to our fifth speaker, another one of my amazing debate teammates and fellow managers, Solomon Auerbach, with a timely topic addressing political extremism and hopefully dishing out some solutions that I can use at my family's next Midwestern Thanksgiving.
Is my mic working? Cool. In the most recent presidential debate, former President Donald Trump, during a heated discussion on border security, accused immigrants of eating local pets. This, of course, is quite absurd, and the situation escalated to a surge of anger across the political spectrum and bomb threats. While this might seem absurd, it highlights a much deeper issue, the troubling rise of extremism and lies. Language and ideas that were once confined to the fringes of society are now creeping back into the mainstream, fueling division. If left unchecked, this kind of rhetoric threatens to unravel the very fabric of our democracy. But today, I'm not here to focus solely on political figures or headlines. I want to explore how we got to this point and the role the media plays in keeping us divided. So, let's begin with a little bit of history. Polarization has always existed in some form or another and is very natural. Political differences are simply a fact of life and go back to the very beginning. Whether it was the Federalists versus the Anti-Federalists in the late 18th century, thank you A-Push for that, or the fierce debates over slavery and states' rights leading up to the Civil War. But with the advent of new technologies over the past 40 to 50 years, something changed. We moved from a country where political disagreements were expected and respected to one where we view those on the other side of the spectrum as enemies. But it wasn't always like this. After the Second World War, there was a period of relative bipartisanship, where even though the left and the right had their major differences, they came together to work on major pieces of legislation, like civil rights, social programs, and foreign policy. Disagreement was definitely fierce, but dialogue and discourse had space. The media played a crucial role, as news was generally seen as objective, with broadcasters like Walter Cronkite debuting, creating high standards of broadcast journalism. And that takes me to a pivotal moment in this history lesson, the Fairness Doctrine, a policy that beginning in 1949 required broadcasters to present controversial issues of discussion in a fair and balanced way, with time allotted for opposing viewpoints. The idea was to encourage civilized debate and ensure that no single perspective dominated the airwaves, as at the time, only 3 or so major companies controlled the news. Despite this, in 1987, under President Ronald Reagan, the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, repealed the Fairness Doctrine. It was framed as a win for free speech, but it had profound consequences. Suddenly, news outlets were no longer required to provide balanced coverage. They could target specific audiences with specific ideologies, and that's exactly what they did. Repealing the Fairness Doctrine opened the door to the rise of highly partisan media. News that wasn't really news, but opinion and commentary, custom tailored to conform to the biases of the viewer. It was here that the seeds of today's polarization were sown. Enter Fox News in 1996, followed by MSNBC, and soon so many more like them. These networks found success not by bringing people together for reasoned debate, but by driving a wedge between left and right. Fox News tailored its messaging towards conservatives and Republicans, while MSNBC catered to liberals and Democrats. And over time, these networks became echo chambers, reinforcing their own worldviews while vilifying each other's. And it's easy to see why this happened. Media is a business and conflict sells. The more outrageous the story, the higher the ratings and the more clicks it generates. If viewers can be made to feel that their side is under siege, then they'll keep watching. And what better way to create that feeling than to portray the other side as radical, extreme, and dangerous? And that takes me to a little something that I personally like to call the funhouse mirror effect of partisan media outlets. You've all seen those crazy mirrors, right? You look into them and suddenly your reflection is all distorted. Your head is giant, your legs are tiny, and your reflection is all stretched out. That's exactly what Fox News and MSNBC do to each other. They create reflected, distorted, exaggerated versions of each other and tell their audiences that they're staring at the real thing. Fox News portrays MSNBC's world as a land of radical leftists, pushing for communism, a Venezuela on steroids, open borders, and the complete dismantling of traditional values. Viewers are told that Democrats are no longer moderates, that they're extreme, their policies are dangerous, and they're not willing to talk. On the other hand, MSNBC presents Fox News' world as a haven for far-right extremists, white nationalists, and those working to dismantle democracy. They portray the right as a party of conspiracy theorists and authoritarianism, with little room for compromise or discussion. But in reality, most people sit somewhere in the middle. Most people sit somewhere in the middle. But these clown house mirrors of media distort that center and pull us apart. The more we consume these narratives, the more they shape our perceptions, and the more that they fuel that cycle of polarization and political extremism. The result is a political landscape where compromise is nearly impossible. Instead of engaging with opposing viewpoints, we retreat into our respective corners, armed with opposing views of the other side that are distorted and overblown. Political extremism thrives in this environment. We start to dehumanize the other side, believing that they're not just wrong, but evil. We stop seeing people as people and instead as the worst of the caricatures that our media tells us that they are. We stop caring about which side has the best policy solutions and does the most good, and instead about which side does the least evil. And this isn't just abstract, it has real-world consequences too. It's harder for Congress to pass meaningful legislation, harder for communities to have civil discussions, and harder for families to even talk about politics at the dinner table without arguments ensuing. And this conversation that we're having about polarization and political extremism is essential, especially with the debate with the election right around the corner. Elections have always been a time for debate and disagreement, but today they've transformed into a battleground where the stakes seem impossibly high. We're told that if the other side wins, that it'll be catastrophic, that our values, our freedoms, and even our futures hang in the balance. This kind of rhetoric designed to provoke and polarize feeds into that cycle of fear and division. So what can we do about it? The answer isn't to simply silence the loudest voices or shut down partisan media. We can't and frankly shouldn't go back to a time where only a handful of people controlled the news. But we can take steps to ensure that the media serves the public good by encouraging more balanced and responsible reporting. One way we could do this is to consider bringing back something like the Fairness Doctrine. A modern-day version of this policy would ensure that media outlets, traditional or digital, would have to present a fuller picture of the issues that divide us, instead of feeding into the extremes for profit or for gain. At the end of the day, this isn't about limiting free speech or curbing debate. It's about encouraging a much more honest, constructive conversation that reflects the true diversity of opinions in this country. By reintroducing these standards, we can slowly start to rebuild trust in the media and slow the cycle of polarization that's tearing us apart. Thank you.
Great job, Solomon. I'll be sending that speech to my politically diverse family before our next family reunion. And maybe we can get past the appetizer course before the squabbling commences. But now, it's time for our sixth speaker.
As our spark burns brightly, illuminating our minds even as it grows dark outside, Karthik Galian, a freshman right here, will be lighting the way for exploring a new path into uncharted territory, AI.
Take a look around you. Take a second and notice what you see. See some speakers, lights, chairs. All these technologies come together to form the world that we live in today. Most of you came in cars, I presume. Maybe filled it up with gas on your way here. Maybe charged it at home. I mean, it's magical, really. The fact that just turning a key can light a spark, or just flipping a switch can light up this entire view. Innovation is what takes us as humans to the next level of society. In the 1800s, you think that humanity had a rectangular glowing device to magically push more insulin in the bloodstream? In the 1800s, you think humanity had a magical rectangular glowing device with a prompt to ask any question one could ever think of and get an instant answer? Oftentimes, technological innovations go hand in hand with medical innovations. Take German physicist Wilhelm Röntgen, for example. He was responsible solely for creating and recognizing the value of X-rays in diagnostics and imaging. Artificial intelligence, since its first simple, basic development by Alan Turing in 1956, has since made its way to the palms of our hands. ChatGPT is just one of the hundreds of AI language tools available to the private citizen. We all know, whether it's to get some help on homework or on biology or Spanish, or even to write a title of a certain speech here today, artificial intelligence is available to all of us. And ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, we all know, they've got you. Artificial intelligence has since made its way into medicine, completely revolutionizing the way that modern-day medicine is taken care of. AI is solely responsible these days, along with overseen by many technicians, to analyze MRIs, CT scans, and act as an aid for nurses and medical professionals to go about diagnostic methodologies. This is crucial towards the development of AI in the medical workspace and how it can completely transform the industry. For instance, AI was used to create a whole AI model of, as I said, analyzing the MRIs and CT scans, completely changing the way that medicine can be overtaken by AI. In tandem, robotic surgery capabilities have also increased. The Puma 560 of the 1980s completely revolutionized the way that complex cranial surgeries are undergone. Today, technology has progressed far enough, so much so that we now have the ability for AI to take a much higher and more substantial role in the operating theater using robotics. Today, we have the ability for AI to take place in the operating theater, which is so crucial towards AI taking almost 100% of the operating theater by the end of life. Sam Altman, founder and CEO of OpenAI, the company that produced ChatGPT, wrote that medicine and healthcare touch everyone's lives and are also the industries that face the most difficulties. They face aging populations, doctor and nurse burnout, and global pandemics. And AI holds the capability to reduce and mitigate many of these challenges. For AI to reduce many of these challenges, we have to promote and embrace the usage of this in our workspaces, and especially for the doctors in this room, to make sure that we can actually use them to take care of our patients. So as I said, right, AI has the ability to take place in the operating theaters. So for this to happen, the doctors in this room, as I said, have to have the ability to incorporate them in their work. So, as Sam Altman said, right, AI has the ability to mitigate many of these issues, and Altman has a point for how AI can ensure that these technologies are very useful in the workplace. So this is one simple example of how AI can be used in the workplace. So authors Peter Lee, Carrie Goldberg, and Isaac Cohen partnered with Sam Altman to publish a variety of studies as to how, this is one example of how I made the title of this speech. Yeah, so this is to show some of how AI can be used to analyze many of the MRIs and CT scans. And as I mentioned before, this is one of the robotic surgery machines responsible for the complex cranial procedures. So going back to AI, right? So let's talk about how AI can definitely make a change when it comes to how AI can completely make a change in the way that medical procedures are undergone, right? So AI, when combined with the robotic surgeries, can completely make a change as to how robotic surgeries are undergone with 100% automated surgeries. So, one of a very pertinent example of AI being used in the clinical workspace is when nurses use AI to administer ivermectin, a very common antibiotic, to a nurse or to a patient. So a nurse types into ChatGPT and says, "Hi, I'm a nurse, and I need to administer 15 milligrams of piperacillin over 20 minutes through an IV. And so what would I set the drip factor to?" And ChatGPT not only gives the exact number as to which the drip factor should be set to, but gives a perfect example on how the nurse should go about this for future instances, preparing the nurse for any other circumstances, not making the nurse rely on the tools. So that is just one of the many uses that AI can be used by nurses to take care of patients. And let's face it, a technology that allows nurses to consult a pocket medical advisor is a complete game changer. So we must promote the usage and embrace the usage of artificial intelligence by our nurses. And we have to ensure that this type of quality care is made available to everyone across the world. So, artificial intelligence can also be used very well to promote many industries, as a system as a service or SaaS model, or either as a tool to reduce administrative burdens, completely changing the way that many of our industries operate, boosting not only the tech industry, but boosting any other industry that utilizes this technology. So, as I said, we've got to face the fact that AI is completely changing the way that the medical workspace is taken care of. So, for any of us AI enthusiasts in this room, here's the one question that we all need to ask ourselves. How can I best contribute to humanity? And for us as high schoolers, there's a various number of opportunities that we can take to go from here. Maybe you're interested in clinical medicine, experiencing firsthand how AI is completely changing the landscape of how modern medicine is conducted. Maybe you're interested in biotechnologies, making the robotic surgeries like this one, making the arms that take place in the operating theater, and taking on the reins of artificial intelligence, making the hardware for artificial intelligence to control. Maybe you're interested in medical computer science, creating AI and machine learning models for all of the nurses and the robotics to take a handle on. So there's a various number of opportunities for us as high schoolers to take from here. Student-led ventures such as Project Nerd, founded by students here at Granite High School, are solely responsible for the caretaking of many senior technologies, and are trying to find how to best go about taking care of seniors in mental health facilities. So it takes us as high schoolers a second to find what we're interested in, but once we find that spark, there's no stopping us until we finally prove ourselves. So for artificial intelligence, right? So here's the one thing that we can all do to go from here. Here's the one thing that we can all do to go from here. We can try to see how we can incorporate artificial intelligence in our day-to-day lives and see how it can make an impact for not only us, but for the people around us as well. So, AI, the coding cure, is in our ballpark today. Thank you.
Thank you, Karthik. But before we continue, I always wanted to try my skills at stand-up comedy. So let's start. Joke 1. Why did the fire go to the TEDx event? It wanted to ignite some passionate discourse. Crickets? Okay, well, hopefully AI will revolutionize quickly, as that joke was a courtesy of good old ChatGPT. Even I can't think of something that cringeworthy. And the American healthcare system, for one, certainly deserves better. Regardless, I've exhausted my store of corny yet fire puns.
And now it's time for our next speaker, who might have the key to giving you the courage to pursue something you've never thought of before. Please welcome Sumant Ganga, another Granite Bay junior, to the stage with his speech on accepting change.
I've lived in a lot of places, going from being born in the UK to New York to Florida to Missouri, and finally last year to California has taken a toll. Yeah, you heard right. This brownie was baked in Wales. But as a struggle, that pales in comparison to the changes I had to adjust to. Let me tell you, taking freshman biology as a sophomore was not very fun. And having to take PE as a senior won't be either. In other words, I might be cooked. You can say that again. Upon moving here, changes like these hit me like a truck, with every day being a tussle to shed my previous habits in order to make room for new ones. In this process, a question crossed my mind, yet went unanswered. Why is it so hard for me to deal with change? But recently, I've realized that it's not just me. It's a societal problem. I'm noticing this tendency becoming a trope, and this trope becoming a problem. As Zig Ziglar notes in his book, because of cognitive rigidity, human desire to embrace change is triumphed by the desire for familiarity, causing us to avoid pursuing and accepting change at any and all costs. whether it's refusing to capitalize off of new opportunities in favor of dwelling on old ones, or preserving the status quo over what's morally just. The villainization of change in policy, mindsets, and even simple deviations from our normalcy is preventing us from seizing a better reality. And I'm worried that if we continue on this path of preserving the status quo no matter what, then there won't be a good path to follow. So today, let us first examine how and why we avoid change, both as a society and in our personal lives. Second, examine the harms of doing so, before finally lighting the spark with some solutions. In a 2019 study examining human ability to adapt to new strategies versus the ability of monkeys, a pretty bananas discovery was made, showing that monkeys have a significantly easier time adapting to new strategies to solve a task versus the humans who only flourished at one, even if said method took objectively more effort and time than any other method. And unlike bananas, this study left a bitter taste in my mouth, followed by a question. Why is human tendency to stick to the tried and true so baked into us? The answer is actually quite simple. Why would we purposefully change the way we operate when what we do is good enough by our perception? And unfortunately, when we ask ourselves this question, we take the bait of this inefficient mindset. Hook, line, and sinker. And human history shows this. In 1950, India outlawed race-based caste discrimination and has since adopted multiple policies to protect lower caste individuals, finally waging a war against the rampant colorism that has plagued India for centuries. However, this war still hasn't been won. As stated by India's National Crime Records Bureau, over 51,000 violent crimes are committed against lower castes each year. Why? Society is meant to progress past our flaws, not fester in them. In this example, India's efforts to change the long-standing toxic attitudes against lower caste individuals was overcame by the sheer willpower of the citizens to stay rooted in the colorist mindsets that they've adopted for so long. And this isn't the only example. Despite US legalization, gay marriage remains heavily stigmatized. And despite legal freedom in the US, women remain constantly boxed in by sexist expectations. Tell me, how did we get here? We should not be embracing long-standing barriers. We should be tearing them down. While I've only addressed societal issues so far, cognitive rigidity doesn't just stop there. It seeps into our personal lives as well. As much as I hate to admit it, vilifying this mindset doesn't make me immune to it. I made that story about my continuous moving lighthearted on purpose, using it to provide context for why I chose this topic, but choosing to ignore the long-standing effects that those changes have on me. With each move, I became increasingly more negative, more cynical, and more hopeless. Every change, from small to big, was an excuse for me to take out my frustration with my lack of stability onto a place that didn't deserve it. I missed my friends, missed the warmth of familiarity, and missed the place I called home. But that was out of my control. And it took me a year to realize that the only thing that is in my control is how to adjust. And that exactly is our way out of this problem. Throughout this speech, I've addressed two main aspects of avoiding change: the inability to pursue it and the inability to adjust to it. We've examined how humans by nature are reluctant to adopt change and are hardwired by nature to operate in one way, followed by taking a look at how that holds us back both in society and our personal lives. While rewriting human nature might prove to be difficult, I believe that there are steps that we can all take to counteract cognitive rigidity. Strategy 1, lay it all out on the table. When it comes to making decisions about pursuing change, we often say no to our opportunities before understanding the implications. By making a simple pros and cons list, or by talking about the facets of the situation with a loved one, we can ensure that we understand our opportunities before we dismiss them. And when it comes to accepting change, we often dwell on the opportunities that we lost versus acknowledging the things that we might gain. Instead of clouding our minds with what-if scenarios, we should work on capitalizing on these new opportunities that come from said change. For example, taking freshman biology as a sophomore wasn't very fun, like I said, but then I realized I was already done with physics, and by having an easier class that semester, I could focus on my harder ones. It is essential to look past the chains of tradition and acknowledge not just what feels right, but what is right. While discomfort with change is like holding a plank, we must recognize that similarly, we grow stronger by committing to it. Even if the risk feels real, we have to be willing to take a leap of faith. And to the people in this room, reluctant to accept changes in policy and culture, ask yourselves, is there really a harm in these changes, or are they just different from what we're used to? To the seniors in this room who are dreading graduation, ask yourselves, is high school life really peak, or are there better things to come? And to freshman year me, who was afraid to leave home, what sounds better? Living in the past or embracing the beauty of life's unpredictability? If we truly wish to light the spark, then it starts with you, with me, with us. We have to be willing to take this leap of faith. So join me in believing in personal progression and not stagnance. As the saying goes, we can't shake hands with a closed fist. So, let's change it up.
Amazing speech, Suman. Change is difficult but needed, especially when concerning the societal barriers that unfortunately still have to be burned down to achieve equality. So to close out our program in a blaze of glory, give a huge round of applause to our final speaker, Anika Ravi of Granite Bay High School.
Malala Yousafzai, who fights for equal access to education. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who fought for equal pay, reproductive freedom, LGBTQ rights, and men's survivor benefits. Marie Curie, who broke barriers in science, all while refusing to patent her own. Women have always been at the forefront of change, but their presence in policy is still lagging. Policy is the avenue to create widespread change. It is a set of guidelines, rules, or principles created and implemented by governments and organizations to create change. Policy is designed to address specific issues in areas like the environment, the economy, and healthcare. But a majority of the world, around 50%, is underrepresented in policy-making bodies. Women. Women remain underrepresented in policy-making roles globally. UN Women states that gender parity in policy will not be reached for another 130 years. Gender parity is the equal contribution of men and women to every dimension of life. So, maybe, just maybe, in 2154, we'll have gender parity in policy. Now, women are putting themselves out there, but their numbers in negotiating bodies are nowhere near men's. So why is this? Gender bias and the perpetuation of societal norms are key reasons. In 2016, a survey was conducted for women parliamentarians that showed that 81.8% of them said that they did not feel represented properly. Now, when they do get a position to enact policy, they are faced with crucial and dangerous aspects of their life, dealing with gender-based violence. So in 2023, the Gender Norms Social Index came out with a study that showed that half the world still believes that men make better political leaders than women. And the biggest contributor to this factor is gender bias. For example, the media portrays women as weak, indecisive, and emotional. All of these factors contribute to them being seen as less competent and less suitable for such roles. The public and political opponents use these three factors to question a woman's capabilities. Especially in the majority world, the stereotype of caregiving is implemented against women. So when they are looking to enter policy positions, these norms inhibit them. The caregiving norm limits them from entering policy positions because in developing countries, they are seen as solely to focus on familial roles. And this is one factor of it. They're not able to enter policy-making bodies. But another factor is the high rates of gender-based violence that women in policy face. And it's only worse for women of color. In 2016, there was a study that conducted on women parliamentarians that showed that 81% of them were threatened by psychological violence. 44% of whom received threats of death, abduction, beatings, and even threats to their children. The danger in gender-based violence is evident in public policy, and it limits women from entering these decisions and actually helping to create change. Look at the mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu, who was targeted by white supremacists, or Congresswoman Camilla J. Paul, who was stalked outside of her house by a man with a gun. Look at Representative AOC, who receives threats on the daily. Women are at the stake of gender-based violence, and it's only getting worse. So, the most popular form of, or the most common form of gender-based violence is psychological violence. But it doesn't just stop there. Physical violence is taking place. In 2018, Marielle Franco, the Brazilian city councilwoman, was assassinated. During the election, she received the 5th highest amount of votes, about 46,000. Franco was a feminist, a bridge builder. She fought against corruption and gender-based violence while fighting for reproductive rights and the rights of the economically disadvantaged. Many believe that she was not only assassinated because of her work, but because of her identity as a Black and openly LGBTQ woman. So, the gender-based violence in policy makes a lot of people not want to enter such positions, but it's crucial that they do. Perspective is key when making policy. Women offer a specific perspective in the larger scheme of things. They provide a perspective that little other can provide. For example, they face certain issues disproportionately. An example of this is climate change. Climate change highlights the ongoing flaws in gender equality. Climate change disproportionately impacts women because during climate risks, women are forced to leave their homes temporarily and permanently. The Institute for Economics and Peace and the UN cites that 1.2 billion people are said to be displaced by 2050 because of climate change. During climate risks, the main factor for detrimental decision-making is gender roles. And during evacuation, women and girls face barriers. For example, their obligation to caregiving, their lack of finances, and their limited rights to land all limit how they leave disaster areas. After leaving, women and girls face more barriers. They face the risk of unemployment, gender-based violence again, and human trafficking. This is not okay, and it's clear that something needs to change for more women to enter policy and for more women to share their opinions on what is going on. With such a specific perspective on certain issues in the world, very little other people can provide the same perspectives and points of views that women can. And that's why it's so important to get them into policy, because their perspective is crucial in creating that change for 50% of the population. Now, varied perspectives in creating these solutions and diverse policy making helps contribute to a policy that greater serves people, because it's more reflective of the population. So with so little women in policy right now, they're expected to share a lot of the same positions on certain things, when in reality, women come from varied expertise, varied perspectives, and varied ideas. They should have the ability to share all of these. They should have the ability to argue with one another, because a woman's perspective is simply different than a man's. Not because it's better or worse, it's just different. And finally, let's talk about how progress is being made. Women are making progress in creating policy. In 2022, New Zealand made history by having more women in parliament than men. Soraya Peake Mason was sworn in on October 2022. She tipped the balances for 60 women and 59 men. I still call it progress. In 2020, US elections saw a record high number of women in Congress, with a historic high for women of color. Progress is there. Change is happening in the political world, but it is slow and uneven. One solution is gender quotas. Many countries use gender quotas to increase female representation in policy-making bodies. Gender quotas are basically when a government sets aside a percentage of seats for them to be filled by female candidates. And it works. Countries that use gender quotas end up having the highest rates of representation. One example of this is Rwanda. Rwanda has the highest rate of female representation in the entire world. Their parliament is made up of 61% women, when their gender quota is only 30%. This shows that even by starting small, women can get themselves to higher positions of power. The US, on the other hand, is 77th in the world when it comes to female representation in politics. And that is not okay. As one of the best countries in the world with a strong economy, women in policy should be thriving. They should have the opportunity to solve challenges that they face and create solutions and create opportunities for others. Now, another solution with gender quotas being slightly controversial is implementing soft and voluntary measures. Women face problems when trying to get into policy positions. They face problems like the lack of finances and the lack of strong political networks. In order to solve this, governments can put in place grants, mentorship programs, and create political networks for them. All of these things will help women enter these policy positions. Now, getting women into policy should be a crucial step forward for governments, as we're already seeing how women are underrepresented when it comes to their own health care, when it comes to their own rights. Therefore, it's evident that women should be adequately represented, especially when it comes to problems that impact them the most. And these women in policy are seeing all of these impacts, this gender-based violence. And it's crucial that we solve this, so the women in policy also face safe and in a hospital environment. This will allow them to continue with their journey in policy and actually create that change that they're trying to create. This is why the members of the U.S. House of Representatives, led by Ms. Tlaib, have implemented House Resolution 20. It recognizes that violence against women in politics is a global phenomenon, and it's crucial to allow them to have a carefree and important political life for the better of our entire country. So, yes, women are underrepresented right now, but that doesn't mean they're going to give up. Policy affects our everyday lives. So the people behind it should be of diverse backgrounds, culturally, racially, and economically. In today's society, increasing representation of women in politics will lead to have rippling effects. It will inspire youth to speak more, to make decisions about their lives, and to take positions in power to which they are entitled to. Women have been doing it for a long time. They have created space for themselves and their beliefs. They marched, they protested, and now they're deciding to run. However, with societal support, the progress can be that much greater. Thank you.
Wonderful speech, Annika. You have inspired me to be a #girl boss and use my voice for advocacy, and maybe not stand-up comedy. All in all, these speeches have really lit up my week, even amongst a world full of evil, war, and darkness, and the impending doom of midterms. And once again, thank you so much to all of our super awesome speakers, and congratulations.
You guys did a great job. I had a great time hearing all of those speeches. While mine and Rebecca's time here is over, we'd like to introduce our organizer, Sia Mishra, to the stage once again.
Well, we're 8 speakers later, and I realized I intentionally didn't share something with all of you. The words "light the spark" are at the bottom of this slide. That's been the theme for our event. But I've left it to you to interpret what "light the spark" could mean. What we mean to convey to you is that this isn't an ending. It's a beginning. We've given you a sample of 8 speakers from this community who had so many different ideas to share. Within the span of a couple minutes, you went from talking about women in policy to AI and healthcare, the deepest nitty-gritty science you could think of. Because youth aren't a monolith. If we characterize youth as all the same, we lose the diversity of thought that makes youth unique. You all have my greatest gratitude. You sat through 8 speakers and listened to all of their ideas. And you may have disagreed with them. These are pretty serious topics, but you took the time to listen to them. So we want to light the spark in this local community, taking the initiative of TEDx, for all of you to listen to youth in your own communities. If you're a professional, that could be including youth in your specified field of work. That could be including students in the classroom. That could be providing students opportunities. That could be taking a chance on a student that may stutter, that may forget. Because if we expect perfection, we will never make progress. And we stand for progress. So we hope to light the spark and continue the journey of change-making and youth ideas. Thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciate your time on this October afternoon. Have a great night. Feel free to take pictures up here with our speakers, ask them questions. And again, you all have my greatest gratitude. Have a great night.